And so finally, I want to end with a few practical reflection for us, very quick one. When we talk about sexual temptation, we need to ask ourselves, are we tempted right now? Are we easily tempted in this area? Or are we also tempting others sexually? Just now I mentioned, if we want to overcome sexual temptation, we have to guard our hearts and our eyes and our minds. But the thing is, we do not just need to guard our own eyes and our own minds. We also need to help to guard other people's eyes and other people's mind. Meaning to say, we need to consider what are the signals we are giving others through our words, our actions, especially to the opposite gender. Now, Joseph's example, just the moment he's aware that his master's wife has indecent thoughts, lustful thoughts toward him, he took action immediately to avoid her, stay away from her. He didn't want to be even in her presence. So how about us? We need to ask ourselves this question. Like, when necessary, do we keep a healthy distance, or we feel everybody very friendly? So we need to ask ourselves, did we already have the safe, blessed, healthy distance from a person of the opposite gender? It could be a married person, attached person, the other party, or we ourselves is already married or attached, or two persons, they are unmarried. Both of them are unmarried, they are not married yet. So is there a distance between unmarried persons versus those who are married? And also, of course, if when we talk about Christian, the Bible tells us to find Christian partner. So if we are interested in a non-Christian, dating candidate, is there a healthy distance that we kept? Now, when I talk about healthy distance, it's not that we totally cannot interact with them. Wow, I cannot talk to a married person, I cannot talk to a non-Christian dating potential. But we can talk, we can interact, but we need to ask ourselves, do we know the boundary, such as physical touch, or whether even two persons could be alone, especially in a dark place like cinema or certain places. So whether two persons can be alone. So these are things we need to pray about, because we need to realize sometimes there is a difference, or there's a thin line, a very thin line between being friendly and just flirting. Sometimes people who want to flirt, they give themselves this excuse, I'm just being friendly, I'm a friendly person, I'm a warm guy, or I'm a warm girl, I'm very outspoken. But we cannot fool God, because God knows our heart, and we ourselves will know. So we need to keep examining our heart. Sometimes when a person makes a suggestive comment, or when a person has certain crude humor in his words, we need to really ask ourselves, what are the underlying signal a person is sending when he's making suggestive comment, crude humor? What is he trying to hint at behind the scene? What are the signals the person is trying to send? I mean, certain things or certain jokes, they may appear harmless, but we really need to check our intentions that, why are we saying certain things? Why are we accepting certain joke and enjoying certain talk? What kind of response are we trying to get from others, when we say certain things? So we need to check whether we are intentionally or unknowingly tempting people into lustful desires. Now, the Bible also tells us this, another thing. When we talk about practical, helping others to guard their heart and their eyes and their minds, the Bible tells us, Paul says, I also want the women to dress modestly with decency and propriety. Now, 3 synonyms. Why is the Bible so naggy just in one? Sometimes we find God very naggy, we find the preacher also very naggy, but in just one verse, actually there's a lot of synonyms. Modestly, decency, propriety, it's all about the same meaning. Why did the Bible keep rephrasing? Because this is very, very important. No matter what reasons we cite, to justify, this is not relevant, this is outdated, this is whatever, the Bible makes it very clear. This is very important in the eyes of God. God is serious about this instruction. Dress modestly, with decency and propriety, adorning themselves, not with elaborate hairstyles of gold or pearls or expensive clothes, but what? If you want to look pretty in God's eyes, if you want to be blessed as a woman, God says, adorn yourself with good deeds, appropriate for women who profess to worship God. Now we know, I think we also mentioned before that a pastor recently got bombarded when she just encouraged sisters to dress appropriately, modestly. But this is actually not the pastor's word, but the Bible's teaching. And so, of course we know, this command is also to help brothers not to stumble. And of course we know that the one who commits the sin, the actual sin, must be taken to task. But then we need to question ourselves. Yes, the person doing the actual sin, he should be punished. But what about the role of the tempter? Does the tempter have no responsibility at all? Now, when we look at Adam and Eve, when they ate the forbidden fruit, they had to be, and they were punished by God. They were condemned for their own act of sin. So they were condemned for their own sins. But did God spare the tempter, Satan? God also rebuked Satan. So in the same way, today if I place a stash of cash and a box of jewelry, gold jewelry outside my house door, not outside, at my house door, and somebody just came along and took the cash and the jewelry without my permission, of course the person has to be punished for his crime of theft. The law will punish the person for stealing the cash and the jewelry from me. The law will not punish me. But we need to think, do I have a responsibility if I put the stash of cash in obvious sight at the door of my house? I didn't close the door, I didn't look after the cash. Somebody take it away. Yes, the person is sent to jail for his act of crime, but the tempter also need to reflect. So if we can understand this example, I don't understand why people get angry, when the pastor suggests that females or women sisters should dress modestly so that brothers will not stumble. So of course I'm not saying, if a woman is not wearing modestly, then she has this clear intentional motive of seducing a guy. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that, when a woman wears very little, she has this pure intention of seducing men. I mean, of course, sometimes there could be reasons like, in Singapore it's so hot, we want to dress lesser to feel more comfortable. Otherwise it's very hot, very, very not comfortable. I mean, whatever the case, we know that sometimes we do not intentionally tempt others. Or we may not have realized that certain things we say, certain jokes we make, certain mannerisms we carry, certain clothes we wear, we may not be aware that it has unintentionally tempted others. But the thing is, once we are aware, so when we don't know, of course we are not culpable. But the moment we are aware, the moment we got informed or taught that certain things we do, say, wear may stumble others, we should be mindful out of love for others. And I think Romans chapter 14 says it the best with regard to this matter. Because the whole chapter of Romans 14, if you go and read it, we don't have time to read the whole chapter, but Romans 14 says it the best. For certain things that God didn't give outright instruction. God didn't give outright instruction on a few things in our life. So for those things that God didn't give outright yes or no instructions, yes, we do enjoy a certain level of freedom, and it is not wrong if we choose to go along our preference. The thing is, once we found out that some of our preferences actually stumble others, we shouldn't do it. Not because the thing itself is wrong, but because the Bible in Romans chapter 14 clearly says that it is wrong to stumble others. Now, Romans 14 is very interesting. Romans 14 says it is not wrong to eat certain food, but it is wrong if you eat that food, which is okay to eat. But if eating that okay food stumbles someone, it becomes something that is wrong. So whether it's talking about food, whether it's talking about dressing, some people, they get angry. It's my freedom, what? How I want to dress is my problem. Why do you have to interfere with how I dress myself? I like to be a fashion model. I like to look trendy. I like to look pretty. Why are you infringing on my human rights? Or some people, whether it's about the dressing, whether it's about the words, whether it's about the action, we need to ask ourselves, certain things that is not right or wrong. It's about our freedom, because God gave us the freedom. But we need to ask ourselves, would we choose our freedom over our love for God and for men? Would we choose our pleasure at the expense of God's displeasure? So God, very clearly in Romans chapter 14, He wants us to act in love for the mutual edification of His people. So of course, then we pray that as God's people, and sometimes I also struggle. Because certain things is really, for example, as far as dressing is concerned, of course we sisters, we want to look trendy and nice, and We want to show off the place where we look nicer. But we need to ask ourselves, what is more important? Our freedom, our secret pride to show off our beauty in certain areas which we think we look nicer at, is that more important? Or our love for God, or our desire to please God, is that more important?